your intro and everything. Okay, it's coming up. Segment of great straight talk with Grover Thornton. This program is designed to inspire, educate, and inform you of how government works, national, state, and local, and how it impacts our lives. Our program tonight will be very interesting. I would have had a guest who was running for sheriff in the primaries next month, Mr. Coleman. He had to go out of town on an emergency. However, he will be on the next show next month. But I want to start off with talking a few things on Black history. You know, February was always designated as Black History Week. Started that with Miss Woodson and went to a month. And that's why we are enjoying Black history now for a whole month. And every president has mentioned and passed a resolution about Black history. We need to inform our children more than anything, because Black history is under an assault by people who want to whitewash history. You cannot whitewash history. What happened, happened. It is what it is. And if it's a terrible thing, then what you try to do is to eradicate that situation. The white man knows that they mistreated Black citizens. 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which was passed in 1868, after the emancipation, they knew then that we should have been treated as first-class citizens because of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. And the 15th Amendment to the Constitution gave us the right to vote. And Congress was supposed to pass the legislations to effect and put into action those two provisions. And of course, they did not. And we have been fighting, and we are still fighting. And as President Lincoln said, 200 from 1619 to 1863, 250 years working for nothing, toiling for nothing. That's why all these big corporations, they have money that's been passed down through generations and generations. And they don't want to give us any reparations at all. There are a lot of things they could do. Now, I personally, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of money, but you know as well as I know, if the government gave a bunch of every African-American money in this country, many of it would go right back to the white folk the next week. buying drugs, liquor, doing everything but something constructive. A lot of us would do wonderful things, buy homes. There are many ways they could give us reparation. Make interest rates lower. Encourage people to buy homes. Good jobs, good paying jobs. Many ways they can do that. But they always want to keep us oppressed. And the Constitution gives everybody the same equal opportunities, supposed to. This country is not a country with a class, an upper class system in this country. No one's supposed to be above the law. And of course, we all are waiting to see exactly what the Supreme Court will do about that dumb man, Mr. Trump. But he wants to have immunity. The court should have not interfere with that problem at all, because the right to vote. And I went along with Colorado against Colorado on that, because every state would have it, all the different type situations would come in. You ought to have one unified thing to vote. All 50 states cannot keep people off a ballot like that. And I went along with that, but I'm not going to go along with no immunity. That's what everybody's waiting to see. That man is a low man. He's low, got no character, no decency, no respect, a thug, and he has the right to call, the ability to call everybody, Ms. Clinton, crooked, Biden crooked. He has a mental problem, ladies and gentlemen. I was watching TV one night, and a psychologist who studied behavior and a psychiatrist, a medical man, the woman said the same thing. Both of those people agree that Mr. Trump has a mental problem. Mr. Trump does not know that he's a crook. All the things he's done, ripped off money from banks, over $163 million from banks when he mortgaged his property. Said he had this old man going to jail for about 6 to 8 months. He kept the books. They would say, for instance, if they want to borrow money from a bank, what's the footage? He'll say 30,000 feet. And maybe it was only about 20,000. All that type of stuff like that. Crooked. And he has the right, the audacity, think he's right, to call everybody a crooked. But I want to say this on Black History. I didn't get an opportunity to talk too much about Black History last month because Mr. Julius Hall was on the show. And I got to have him back in April, May, after the election anyway, so he could tell us. You'll be surprised at things as I'm reading that book that went on in a prison. I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. So many things going on in the prison that's going on outside. You might well let them in on the outside because they're bothering the same things on the inside the prison and more. It's ridiculous. It's awful. So, but I wanted to say a few things on Black History anyway, because they're trying to, as I say, whitewash our history, and our Black children should know it. They don't want certain books in the school. Everybody got a right to read what he wants to read. Like Thurgood Marshall said, I said that before the show, that government has no right to be in a man's bedroom and to tell a man what he should and should not read. I just want to start tonight by I got to mention a couple of things on Black history. But let me tell you about this first. Last year, I'm going to the second year of this program now. Last year, my assistant sets up all the technology on this to put this program into effect. She showed a wall which I have in my office, a Black History wall. It has pictures and events and individuals from 1619 to the present. So I wanted to have it on the television during Black History Month because they were showing different things. You saw it if you saw your television all through the month. They were showing different things about African Americans, their achievements or whatever. And I wanted the people to see it. So I called WSAV and I called WTOC. And I asked the lady, after I explained to her what I wanted, she put the notices in their box. But when they came in, she said they would always look at what things they wanted to cover. So they did not cover this event in my office. The morning news, Mr. Charlie Brown contacted the gentleman in the morning news. I really didn't know the morning news was not printing in Savannah anymore. It's in Jacksonville. But anyway, they sends everything through satellite. But the gentleman never did call me. So I really wanted to show the community some of these things that young people could see it. And I met a lady in the laundry, and she said she can't wait till she bring her children to see this wall, because they don't have these things in the schools. And that's why you're not going. They'll try to say Obama was not the first black president. Like a white friend of mine said, well, how you gonna say he's black? So he has mama white, daddy black. I said, well, the black man genes overtook her genes. And I said, wait a minute. You all said that if you got 1/8 black blood, you're black. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. So that it shut up on that problem. So the fact of the matter is we got to let our children learn about our culture. That's what I try to do. So when I called the TV stations, after I didn't hear from 2 individuals I thought would contact me, I knew. This white lady said to me, Mr. Thornton, I wish I could see that wall. I invited her to come to my home to see the wall. And this is what I said to her. And I said to the gentleman at the other station, if I shot someone in my house, my children, because my wife is deceased, but if I shot my children or any guest in my house, there'd be more TV people out here than a little. But something constructive, something educational, wasn't able to show it to the community. But I want to show you this right here, solid with Black history. I want you to keep in mind about this young lady here, Miss Ruby Bridges. To read this little thin book. You got to buy this book for your child. Let them read. Children got to learn how to read. A lot of them go on interviews for jobs and they can't read. And I'm not trying to be critical of anybody, because we can learn how to read now. And you improve your reading by reading. That's how you improve your vocabulary, by reading. So this little girl right here, very thin book. And I always write the books and cut down on the pages, 300 and 400 pages, too much. That's why I read a little bit here on this book a while and on this book a while. If you make it, now I'm not saying this thin, but at least 150 pages. But anyway, this little girl right here was in New Orleans back in 54. And she was the only child in the school. The white parents took all their children out of school, and this little girl right here was the only one in the school. And what happened? A nice white retired teacher from Boston, Massachusetts, came all the way to New Orleans. And she and this little girl were the only one in school. She taught this little girl, this is her first grade, coming into first grade. And in this book, it's terrible. All these parents that raised in hell, hoping and hollering. And there were 3 marshals that had escorted the child. They would have killed that little girl. And even in this book, they have the picture where they have her in a casket. See, so they're trying to say, this way you ought to be. And I said to myself, this is supposed to be America, with the Constitution and the Declaration, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, it sure has not been no happiness for Black people. It's been terrible, and they're still trying to cause oppression. Look what they did in Alabama. Out of 7 districts where people have an opportunity to win, only 1 was given to Black folk. And the court knocked that down, and now they're going to have to give African Americans more districts where they have an opportunity to be in place. Now, I wanted to say that about Black history, and I'm going to bring Miss Gunn on just a minute. I got an whole hour. Now, this book right here, I want you to see that I'm reading, that my son sent to me for my birthday. This Black guy's an author here, and this book here is really telling everything about America. And it talk about the slaves that came to Jamestown in 1619, and that Virginia had this shortage of labor. And then they began to import Black folk from Africa, import them. And America, the idea he wants to say in this book, that slavery really started with an American idea. Because in England, there was no legislation where England had forced segregation of slavery. America, and you know what America did, saw the Civil War with 51,000 men were dead, missing, or wounded. In 3 days, 17,000 men on each side of the wall. Now I'm going to bring in Miss Gunn to talk about some things. You know, we talked about that square downtown. I don't know what year. Maybe I need to research the year. Why they named that square after John Calhoun? And I find out this from his gun. That was the fact is this, that is a cemetery, that square, where African American slaves are buried. Now, they would not have named, if a bunch of Jewish people were buried in that cemetery, would they have a statue or a marker with Adolf Hitler as the person? No. And I got to compliment Ms. Gunn and her group, that Jubilee Group is the name of it, that they worked for years to finally get that square, and Mr. Calhoun offered that square. And unfortunately, I don't know who's advocating this, but I'm going to find out. Somebody wants to leave a marker, say this square was once named after John Calhoun. This should be eradicated. Nobody should, he go into history. Nobody know about that racist man. But I'm going to find out from Ms. Gunn in just a few minutes when she come on this show. Is that a true fact or not? Ms. Gunn, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you very well. Ms. Gunn, I was so pleased several weeks ago when I saw your hard work became a reality. That square now has the name of Ms. Susie King on that square, the plaque with her name on it. Bring us up to date on what happened, and those who were, I'm very straight now on this show. Very straight. I call it like I see it now. Who was against it, who didn't want it, which I couldn't understand. Anybody would be against trying to elevate a Black woman who worked all during the Civil War, slipping, hiding, teaching people how to read and write. Is that right, Ms. Gunn?
That's correct. That's correct.
All right, so go on and brief us. I want to apologize for being a little host tonight. This pollen has really been down on me this year, but I didn't want to give up, not have my show. Go ahead, Ms. Gunn. Give us an update on what happened. I was pleased to see it a couple of weeks ago. That was a reality. A lot of citizens were there when they made that dedication. Go right on, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I'm honored, Mr. Thornton, to be here to tell the story. It's been a 3.5-year journey. It started with a tourist that came to town and basically said that they done some research and it was a burial ground and we should go down to Calhoun Square and check it out. I went to Calhoun Square because I remember a few years ago there was some gas workers that dug deep and they hit an area that they thought was a gas main or something, but it was actually skeletal remains. And I remember so well when they dug them up, they became the skeletal remains of humans, of course. They took it to the GBI. The GBI said that it was African American. They sent it back to Savannah, to the Savannah Police Department, and we began to research, and they lost the skeletal remains at the Savannah Police Department.
Lost it?
We had a computer glitch, and we don't know where it is. And so I remember that. So as we began to do the research on Calhoun Square, what we found out was that both Calhoun Square and Whitfield Square are burial grounds. And so Whitfield Square is the Negro burial ground, and it floats over to over that area. We later find out, so that the community knows, that all over downtown are burial grounds of enslaved people, and I'll share that in a moment, what's going on now. But anyway, we talked to the city officials and we said, how come there's no marker? What do you mean it's burial grounds there with enslaved people? And they said, well, that's just the way it was. And so we kept pursuing it, and then we decided, let's change the name of the square since our ancestors are below it. So the square initially was put together by my organization, the Center for Jubilee, that's what it was called, as a process of renaming the squares. We wanted to rename both of the squares, both Whitfield and John C. Calhoun. And we wanted to name Whitfield Square Jubilee Square, and we wanted to name Calhoun Square the Sankofa Square, which means go back and fetch it, go back and get your history. But we wanted them to be replaced we began to work with the neighbors. When I put the initial application in, I did it as the director of the Center for Jubilee. But then I realized we've got to interact with the neighbors because the city application says that you must get 51% of the neighbors around that square, and they gave us every address. They have to be in compliance and vote 51%. And so we formed the coalition to rename Calhoun Square with neighbors and supporters from all over the city, organizations, retired folks, students at Susie King Taylor Center. It was a whole cadre of people, I would say close to about 60 people or more. We began to do extensive work nationally. At the time, Mr. Thornton, I was the National Policy Fellow for the Truth Telling Project, and they embraced us every step of the way. So anytime we did anything locally, they would put it out nationally. So people were watching from around the country. Make a long story short, we kept getting 51%. And every time we got 51% of the neighbors to get signatures in, someone would sell their home. I want you to know when they sold their home, that pushed us back. And so we tried 3 times to get it done. And we realized we have an application process that has flaws. We talked to the city and we said, you really need to change the law. But what we did not want them to do is to go into changing the law, which would take another 2 years in terms of back and forth with the city's council and attorney's office. And so I wrote a letter to the law department in Atlanta, and I said, can you give me a legal opinion of this application? The application said that you can rename parks and streets, and then there was a category that said other. I said, this is not a park or a street. So my square that I want to apply for is in the other category. We sent it to the law department as I share, and they came back and sent the opinion, not to me, but to the city attorney. And the legal opinion said, Ms. Gunn is correct and her organization is on point. She can request that the name be replaced because it is not a street, it is not a park, and it fits that category. However, our strong legal suggestion is that they make an application and go through the process with their city council and let them vote on it as a policy, so that if someone wants to go back after the fact and try to change it, they don't want to go back and forth in court. Let the city council decide. It is their public square. And so that's where we began our efforts. So after 2.5 years, maybe going close to 3 years, back and forth, we kept losing and we kept gaining the 51%. I want to share for the community that there are 2 organizations, one a church and one Massey Heritage Center. And Wesley United Methodist Church owned 3 properties. We said, can you give us one of those votes? And they said, well, it's in the middle of a pandemic and we can't gather. I said, well, according to the church rules and regulations, you just need to go to your trustees or your board of directors, but they would not give it to us. I want to let you know that the minister said, I am in support, but my congregation has 2 people in here and they're running for office and it's just too much right now. So we were not able to get them to give us one of the 3 property votes. We asked Massey Heritage Center, and that meant it would get tied up in the school board. So we decided that we won't go to Massey. We'll just keep pushing. I want to let you know that every month for 3.5 years, we educated the community by putting together what we call Come Sunday. We met at Whitfield Square so that we would intentionally not agitate the neighbors around Calhoun Square because they were so helpful. I want you to know that the neighbors around Calhoun Square that were in opposition were very, very aggressive. I want you to know that I have worked for 30 plus years in social justice in Atlanta, and I work with the honorable, beloved Earl Shinholster. I miss him so much. I work with Jean Guerrero and so many others, John Lewis, Ambassador Andrew Young, and the widow of Dr. King, all of them in the 70s and 80s. So I know how to fight for justice. And so we got a lot of calls from people that were threatening our lives. I have a tour company, and I have a gentleman that used to come up to me all the time, so close to my face, and say, "You better not get Calhoun Square. He's my ancestor." And so I want you to know that this gentleman is an African American. So we had a lot of trials and tribulations. We
But let me
realized,
ask you this.
yes, sir.
Let me kind of shorten it up because I want to talk about another problem that
Yes,
the black community need to know. So let's just
yes,
try to tie it on down to when you had the dedication. A question I want to ask you:
yes.
most of those people around the square were white, right?
All of them.
All of them were white. Um,
Yes, sir.
so I know you said you had to have 51% to get that going. So
Yes.
did you have any problem trying to solicit that amount?
We were able to get 51% of the neighbors 3 times, Mr. Thornton, but when someone sold their house, we lost the neighbors'
Oh, I
percentages.
see. Oh, doing the
So
yeah, I'm saying okay.
I just want to make this point because I need to tell the truth here. 3 women on the city council, Alicia
Yeah.
Blakely, Renetta Lanier, and Keisha Gibson Carter, said to us, "You're doing it the wrong way. All you have to do is get 4 people on the city council to place this item on the agenda." And they
Uh-huh.
proceeded to do that. And so that's how we were able to get everything fast paced. And so in 2023, in the fall, the city council voted to replace the name with Susie King Taylor. Prior to that, in 2022, they replaced it and said this is going to be an unnamed square. And we competed with over 300 applicants, and they narrowed it down to 18. And then Susie King Taylor won unanimously 9-0 twice for the city council. So we were able to get that name replaced with Susie King Taylor, the first African American nurse on the union side. And we're just so honored that it finally happened. And on February 10th, we had an amazing unveiling of the markers. And the next phase, just so everyone will know, is that we've got to put a beautiful statue out there. So we are in the process of launching a beautiful fundraising drive to raise up a statue that represents Susie King Taylor, a veteran that never got a pension, a veteran that was never acknowledged. We want to acknowledge her. She died in Boston. She's buried there, but she belongs to Georgia on the coast. So we want to acknowledge her. And I want to show her off because Susie King Taylor is from the Gullah Geechee community. Yes,
Well,
sir.
I'm sure that I speak for the majority of citizens in this community that you all did a wonderful job, and I want the people to know that John Calhoun, these are his words, was that slavery is not an evil to the Negro. It's a good thing for him. That's what John Calhoun said. Now, the question I want to ask you, because I want to move on to, because I want to cover some other things before this hour's over.
Yeah.
The question I want to ask again, ma'am, and I want you to be up front with it. And you cannot hide things from the community. You have to tell it like it is. That's the way I am. I have to tell it like it is.
That's right. Let's do
Now,
it.
the question I want to ask you, is this true or false that the mayor or somebody, if it's not the mayor, then I'm going to apologize for that because I don't want to make no enemies or say nothing that's not true. But is this true? I'm going to the source, that someone has proposed that a marker be placed on that same square, that this square was once named for John Calhoun. Who wants to do that? A man that's oppressed black people and say he's better off in slavery. Why don't you want anybody to know anything about him? Now, is that true or false?
Mr. Thornton, it's true. It's already been passed. So we have
That's ridiculous.
Taylor Square. You can Google it. It's in Wikipedia and it's official. But City Council has voted on a marker. It's about $1,300 in purchase for a marker there that will tell the prior history that this was called Calhoun Square at one time and that he was a pro-slavery advocate. Now, the pros and cons of that are people say, no, we should not do that. I spoke up.
That's my position. That's my
Yes,
position.
I spoke up against it as well, but it's there. It was approved. It will not have that information on our statue as we raise the funds to do it. We get a chance to acknowledge just Susie King Taylor, because we're raising the money to do it, and we make sure that it was all about Susie King Taylor. But there is a marker that's going into the ground that will talk about Calhoun, and the mayor says he thinks it is important that you have a history holistically of what happened. Again, at the Monuments and Sites Committee, I stood up and opposed it in record because I think that every other square just talks about that person. But if that's what the city council voted, then we don't have any power on that. But trust
I
that Susie.
understand, but that's just my view. That's
Yes,
just
sir.
my view.
Yes, sir.
Now you're talking about whitewash. That should be whitewash. Now the next thing I want to ask you, ma'am, and then I want to move on to some other things. I appreciate what you did and your group. I'm sure every citizen who cares about good government and about civilization, about the community, honor you and your group for taking the stand y'all did and be able to deal with it such a long time. And with all the ups and downs, you were able to achieve your goal. So I want to congratulate you and your group. And I've been to y'all meetings, and I know y'all give me a plaque. But I know y'all have I want to say this, you have an integrated community, a lot of white citizens. As a matter of fact, when I went to that meeting of yours, and I was leaving out the door with a white gentleman, I couldn't call his name. And he said to me, he said, Mr. Thornton, because he knew my name when y'all honored me with that plaque. He said, Mr. Thornton, I'd like to know, what are they going to do about all of those Confederate soldiers in that Forsyth Park? Nobody wants to do anything about it. Who wants to be reminded of that? But they're trying to get rid of reading books. That's what they need to be getting rid of. Nobody doing anything about it. Now, and what they did in Virginia, the legislators and the people spoke out to get it. Yes, sir. And they had to get two cranes to take the statue down of Robert E. Lee. It was such a huge statue. But they didn't arbitrarily do that. It took pressure from people and concern to speak out about it.
Yeah.
But I would commend you again. Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about was a lot of folk do not know that I think I'm right. You can tell me if I'm wrong. That slavery, the last thing of slavery, the veterans of slavery, was right here in Savannah on Augusta Avenue. Is that right?
That's correct. The weeping time. Absolutely.
Now, explain to the people, I know about the weeping time, but explain to the people about the weeping time and the problem that we're having. Again, they got to fight about the Salvation Army wants that ground should be sort of like on the ground for black slaves. That was the last place we had slavery, and that was a sad thing. Like this book was telling y'all what I'm talking about. Terrible. They're living oppressing black people and made people rich on our backs and our forefathers. It's a shame. But go ahead and tell her about the weeping time. Why is it called weeping time? And I know about it, but I want the people to know. I didn't know about it until last year or so. So you tell us about it. Why is it called weeping time? And tell us where the last veterans of slavery was held here in Savannah.
Yes, so in 1859, two brothers from Boston, Pierce Butler and his brother, had a lot of debt. They owned over 2,000 enslaved people in McIntosh County and two plantations, Butler Plantation and Hampton Plantation. And because one brother was a gambler and basically kind of gambled off the family's estate, he announced to his family, including his brother Pierce Butler, that if we don't sell some enslaved people, we're losing everything. And so they ultimately did. They split 450 people between each brother, and they inventoried and sold 429 people in West Savannah. There was really 436, but 429 sold. The people that were here, that were free men and women of color, they said, we will go to that sale and try to purchase some. They were not allowed to do that. So they had a large sale. Everyone knows, if you check the records, they sold out of hotels. They advertised across the country, and they sold them off in the rain. Now, the rain up today, in terms of the weather, you can call up or Google and say, what's the weather today? All the way into next week, and it'll give you the percentages of rain. But during that time, they didn't have percentages. So we researched and found out that on March 2nd and 3rd, 1859, it was described as torrential rain all day, 2 days in a row. People had umbrellas, and they were sold at the Tin Rock racetrack. Now, initially, they were supposed to be sold downtown, but make a long story short, there were too many people, so that's where they were sold. There's a gentleman who is the president of the Tin Rock racetrack. His name is Charles Lamar, and he was the person that negotiated that the sale be held there. We now find out that Charles Lamar was also one of the men that invested in the joke where they brought in the Wanderer at St. Simon's Island after slavery was over and brought the enslaved in. So we will begin to continue to do research on Charles Lamar. Well, the sale was held, and so that is a sacred ground. Last weekend, we commemorated 165 years later that place, but we are not able to get on the land. That land is private, owned by the Bradley Lumber Company, and then the other part is owned by the Savannah Public Housing Authority, and so there is a negotiated sale. I know there's litigation, and we don't want to get into that, but if I can, I want to share some very exciting news. We have state legislators from the Georgia General Assembly local Chatham delegation, State Representative Gilliard, Ron Stevens, and two others, Ann Westbrook and Mr. Billy Hitchens. I want you to know Hitchens, they have signed legislation, which is House Bill 1425, and it will call for a weeping time corridor for Chatham County. And that will give us access to resources, because we're talking, you guys, about an authority similar to the Gullah Geechee corridor, which is a federal authority. We're looking for a state authority. I want to tell you that it has passed the state's legislative house side on the crossover day last Thursday, the 29th, and it is on its way this week to the Senate, again, as local legislation, meaning we don't have to get all of these guys to sign, only the ones from this area, and we need 2 signatures, and we have 3, and if they sign this week, then it goes to the governor, and we hope that the governor will sign it to give us an authority. What would that do? That will give us an opportunity through a resolution that State Representative Peachtree is pushing for an authority that will create resources to negotiate for the property sale. If the Bradley Company wants to sell, they can. If not, then the authority can look for another site, specifically in West Savannah, so we can drive economic development there, so that we can have a place to commemorate the 429 people that were sold off one by one. So we're excited about it. We're praying. And what we really need folks to do is to call those 3 state senators, Derek Mallow from Savannah, and Billy Walker, and I have the other one, Mr. Strickland. And if you need information, just give me a call, and I'll be glad to give you their direct numbers. I'll send you the link, and you can call them. We need 3 more signatures on the Senate side, and then we'll push for the governor to sign it. And if those things happen, we will have an authority. So that's so much more differently than a commission or a resolution. There's an authority in that bill, which means it is a fundable agency. It will have 4 to 6 representatives. So pull it up, you guys. It's House Bill 1425, and it is going to empower West Savannah specifically. So I just wanted to share with you that that is the next project that the Center for Jubilee is working on. We want to try to help the West Savannah community to have that opportunity for people to come from all over the world to see what happens, so it shall never happen to anyone again. The weeping time is an atrocity, and we want to make sure people know it happened here in Savannah, Georgia.
Well, again, thank you so much. I would have, even though I took a lot of time off the show, Mr. Coleman should have been here. But anyway, the information that you have given us has been very, very thought-provoking for us to understand. And I want to thank you for that, because we have to know what goes on in our community. See, it's one thing for sure. Black folk got to learn how to pay more attention to what's happening locally and nationally in our community and in the nation. Just don't turn off the TV every time there's some news, because good things be on the news. Now, like the president's speech the other night, the old man, yeah, but he was old, but he still got it up here in the head. It was magnificent. In fact, he was the only president that said that gave a State of the Union and criticized his predecessor. He needs criticizing. Now, most of them now, they would talk about their agenda or policy, but he went directly at him and quoted him on some things that he said. So I want to commend you. Go ahead.
He was on point. He was good. Yes.
Yes, he was on point. And I prayed before he spoke. I said, now, Lord, I want you to be everybody can talk to God. I read something the other day, and there was an excellent thing in the book. And the man was talking about God. God has feelings too. God has feelings, and you can hurt God. In the Bible, in the book of Genesis, when Adam and Eve sinned, God said these words, I repented that I ever made them. You can hurt God.
Wow.
You can hurt him. He has feelings just like you and myself. So I was so glad that the president was on time and at point. And a lot of good things. It's a shame how America has treated its own citizens, particularly African Americans. It's a shame. Now, we've been living, even the nation, under this trickle-down economic mess. Look at Trump gave, like the president said, gave the corporations $2 trillion tax cut. And poor old citizens in wintertime be cold in their homes. They cannot give you a minimum wage. It's so low. They can't give you a minimum wage in which it should be a living wage, $15 an hour. Do you read a computer one night? I'd say, I want to see just what that $15 minimum wage would do. If you had a man and a wife working together, that's about $60,000 more a year, qualify for a home. That's what you do things for reparation. Help young black people be able to get homes, give them education, let the children go to college free. You ought to go free. Over 250 years of making money for other people.
Yeah.
They don't. Black folk don't know anything but misery. And they'll hustle, slap on, sleeping on the floor, and terrible disease, cholera, all of that they didn't do.
Yeah.
And not to mention that they raping white men, raping black women, going to the slave market, buying women that they could just sleep with, like in the book. Uncle Tom's Cabin, the woman said, my master told me he bought me to be a baby maker. Lord have mercy. A lot of suffering. But I tell you this, this is still God's world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The children of Israel.
There's a book, Mr. Thornton, and I'm going to let you continue your show, but there's a book called The Sins of the Fathers, and it talks about the sins of the father will visit the sons and daughters and new generations. When I walk downtown with my guests, I tell them we just walked 2 blocks up and we just covered 9 businesses. The first one is the city of Savannah and taxes. So the captain of the ship had to pay taxes. The second one is Mr. Gamble, the cotton factory. The third one is U.S. Customs. Fourth one is the marketing and advertising lanes, Bay Lanes. The fifth one is the auctioneer and the surveyor. The sixth one is the insurance companies. The seventh one is the closing real estate attorneys, where they had closing sales on slaves. And the eighth one is the banks that were created around the squares. And the ninth one is the First Christ Episcopal Church, who invested in the shipbuilding. So we walk up 2 blocks over 9 businesses that made millions. There is a touchy subject. I know we can talk about it another time, but I am a reparationist, and I know that you think it's impossible. I know you think it's impossible right now, but my prediction is that new generations are going to see reparations. It's happening all over the nation. San Francisco city government passed the reparations for African American citizens. New York State is looking at it. Asheville, North Carolina. it's going to come from foundations and corporations. So reparations is coming, y'all. Get ready. It's not coming from the government first, but it is coming. I can tell you what I've seen all around the nation.
Well, during World War II, all the Japanese citizens
Yeah.
were put into a place. They weren't in jail. They were just housed because they didn't know whether the government didn't know whether or not they were saboteurs, they blow up planes, buildings, or whatever. But after the war was over, they were released, and each one of them were given $25,000.
Absolutely.
That's what they were giving the Japanese.
1987, in the basement of the White House, Ronald Reagan gave them that money. One of my board members, Eric Saul, was one of the negotiators for the Japanese American. So he says he was there for the Japanese American, and he believes that the African American community is getting ready to have repair from foundations and corporations. So stay tuned. It will not be the government first.
Just like I read an article, I got the speech that Farrakhan made. You can see what you want about him. I love the way he comes. I love the way he comes on white people. He doesn't bite his tongue on them. And this, I got the news article with the speech, and I read it from time to time. So it was inspiring. And he said, add it up. And he went on to say, how do you add it up? How you do? You went on to how they had black folk working day in and day out, night and day and night. Can't see and can't see. Night can't see. They just working for nothing. Then he talked about the corporations, and he said to the young people, these people who have been the beneficiary of the corporation money, say, no, we can't hold you responsible, but all this money been passed to you. All these big corporations all over the country. The children, grandchildren, great grandchildren now are running these corporations. Millions and millions of dollars made on the back of black people.
Absolutely.
The one of you just said about corporations may do things. Well, I know my show tonight, about 10 more minutes, but all the show tonight has really been interesting. The last thing I want to say is this. This is the fourth time coming up. Mr. Coleman could not be here tonight, as I first stated, but the Sheriff's Department is the only department in which we have not broken the ice. We broke the ice. We had 2 or 3 black mayors. We got county commissioners. We got city councilmen. We got judges. So I'm talking about black folk now into this society, this system. We have the tax collector, all of that now. But we never have had a black sheriff. Now, back then in the 60s, Mr. Sam Williams, he and I was on the NAACP board, Mr. Lord, all at that time. He really worked in this community. A lot of black folk. I wish I could write a book, but about all these black folk dead that did so much that and so much in the ministers. And we lost one of my good minister friend today that they buried him, Mr. Akins, Lexus Akins. Fine man for God, community man, good man. But anyway, we never had a sheriff. We had Mr. Sam Williams, he didn't win. We had Mike Jones, fine gentleman. I worked along with him. He was a fine man, and his wife was the principal of the school. Sam Jones, and then we had Arthur Holmes, fine gentleman. He ran for sheriff. And then Mr. Richard Coleman, who would have been on my show tonight. We have him here next month, Lord's willing, so we can question him to see what his ideas are, how he proposed to do to improve the sheriff's department. But we've had 4 gentlemen have been candidates for sheriff, but we've never been able to break that ice. So Coleman told me tonight when he called me and apologized for not being here. And I told him, I said, well, I know Mr. Williams real well. I worked with Mr. Williams and with Mr. Jones. Those 2 I know I worked with. And of course, Mr. Holmes, I didn't, but he was not successful. He said, I'm going to be successful. I said, well, that's a positive attitude to have. But the fact of the matter is this, that's the only thing we have not broken the ice. And we want to do that this year. And I hope much success in doing that. We have come a long ways as citizens of this country. This country never was supposed to have had, as I stated, a class system. This countries made up what they call the melting pot. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And people of all races and all tongues that come in this country. Only the black man has come and been treated terrible. Now I can't say that. The Jews were treated terrible. The Italians were treated terrible. Now they're back on the Jews now with their war. And the only reason why they want to do that because Iran wants to eradicate Israel from the face of the earth. And whenever happened, God will not be God again, because in the book of Genesis, he said this to Abrams. It was not Abraham then. God called him Abrams and gave him the ham, Abraham. This is what he said to him in the book of Genesis. This day, I give you this land from the river of Egypt to the river of the Euphrates. So God gave them that land. As I said before, Palestine is not a nation. The Palestinians are just in that land. That used to be operated under control of the British. But I don't know to this day, why would they let Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, and all of those anti-Israel countries come into their land? And that's why they're going to suffer. Over 32,000 children have been killed. Lord have mercy. All this killing because they want to uproot and destroy our nation. Can't do it. God will not allow it. So I'd like to take this time again to thank you, Ms. Gunn, for that formative, excellent report that you gave us.
My honor. Yes, sir.
And we need to know what's going on. And I know now people know what the weeping time was. I didn't know what it was until last year before. But I heard how they sold 400 something slaves. We were property. Think of that. Now, the next time on my Black history, I'm going to have to just talk about, but I'm going to have to talk about these cases and these barriers that we had to overcome, like the Dred Scott case. Yeah. Terrible what that man went through. He said he was
I will bid you good evening, but I also want to tell you, the community, to be on alert. We are being challenged, not us, but the city of Savannah is being challenged by a descendant from John C. Calhoun, who is an African-American man. And so we have to go to court on April the 3rd. The city is being sued by him to replace the name of John C. Calhoun. He says he is a descendant and he wants the name replaced. So we are going to court, and the Center for Jubilee is a part of that lawsuit. I'll have more information on my page, my social media pages. We want to pack the courthouse that day. So the judge that is going to do the actual decision making is the same judge in the Ahmaud Arbery case. So we are going back to court for one more time out there on April the 3rd. We go to court in support of the city of Savannah, challenging it. They said it's going to be held here in Savannah.
Well, let me say this about that judge. I've never heard that judge so decent. That's a decent man. I don't know him, but he had a moment of silence in his court in the South. I never done before, because he knew that man was mistreated, blocked by a truck where he couldn't get by.
Yes, sir. Well, we want a couple of from him. We do not want to rescind the name to Calhoun. We want to keep it Susie King Taylor. So we're going to court, and we're going to stand with the city to fight this descendant, who again is an African-American gentleman who says he is a descendant of John C. Calhoun, and he wants it replaced. So we fight for another couple.
How are you going to say he was a descendant? If John had slaves, if John Calhoun had slaves, they weren't adopted. They were probably owned by him. How should I make it? Now, if he had adopted him, then that'd be a difference. See, then he would be actually a descendant.
Yeah. Well, look for information on our Jubilee page in terms of April 3rd, where to go. We want to pack the courthouse so the judge will know we don't want to go backwards. We want to keep the name Susie King Taylor on that square.
And it would be not a bad idea if you circulated a petition and let everybody sign it as a background to help show the views of the people in the community. You ever
Well,
thought of that?
the people have spoken. I think if we show up in large numbers, that judge will say, wait a minute now, this is not correct. We should keep it as it is. And so
I
he's an
hope
elected.
so.
And so I hope
Well,
he'll do the same. Yeah.
well, for our close, in reference to what you just said, I hope the Supreme Court, I don't trust them anymore, took away a woman's right to control her own body. That's between her and her God. But I'm worried about this immunity. Now, as I stated when the program started, that I could go along with them about the Colorado case because every state will be doing different when it comes to putting somebody on the ballot, but be unified with all 50 states. But this immunity, he can't be above the law. This is the only man that says 200 something years in this country that he just got everything in chaos.
Wow.
Now everybody waiting to see if they're going to try to find an avenue to excuse him for his bad behavior.
Well, the people are watching. So we push forward, guard your freedom, raise your voices for justice. We are watching as a nation. When the people get tired, they take over. That's the history of the world. So we're watching this one very closely.
And I thank you again for being on the show. And as we come to the close, I want to say this to the people, that we all must get out and vote as never before. We only need 4 more votes in the House of Representatives. You heard the president say, give him the votes, and he will make Roe versus Wade the law of the land again. Not only that, other things like that bill for insulin, a drug that was manufactured over 100 years ago. They made thousands of dollars, millions, and people are paying $300 for it. Now they got the $35. Now he wants to deal with the banks, charging you $35 if you bounce a check. Sometimes a check is bounced out that you don't have the money, you make a mistake in your addition. $35. He wants to make it $8. So many wonderful things. He got the unemployment over the last 2 years, only 3%. We got the most aggressive economy in the whole world, even though inflation is coming down. There are other factors involved in inflation, which people don't understand. You have the price of oil. You have the shortage of goods that causes inflation. Like that war going on in Iran, there's a lot of companies dependent on that wheat for Syria. All of that causes an effect on inflation in the country. And the people don't, they all so, everything too high. That's true. But some countries are worse. Some countries are worse than inflation. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for listening to the show tonight. And I'm sorry that Mr. Coleman was not here. And I hope that you have a wonderful night and a blessed day tomorrow. And the most important thing we got to remember, we got to tell everybody to vote. Because the voteless people is a helpless people. And I want to thank you. Have a good night, and God bless you for listening to the show. Thank you very much.
Like this. Good.